Hi there, Mark Eanes in the studio. Maria and I are very close to wrapping up the Language of Drawing course, our new online course. We're absolutely ready to tie a bow on it and put it in the can and put it out there into the universe for you. And while doing so, we thought it would be pretty cool to do a whole little YouTube episode on sharpening our drawing tools, the tools of the trade, if you will. Speaking of that, we've kept the tools and materials list for the Language of Drawing course really basic and simple, so it's not an expensive venture whatsoever. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, there is a link below on this particular episode, and you can click onto that, look into the Language of Drawing course, the landing page, and find out more about the tools and materials. Well, let's do the basics here. Pencils. I've got a graphite pencil, a charcoal pencil, a different kind of charcoal pencil, which I'll talk to you about. And there's a whole variety of these, what's known as, I used to always call these, well, they're called willow sticks now. I've always known them as vine charcoal. So they come in different softness and densities, but also different widths. Well, let's start. I've got here this graphite pencil. It's a H pencil. It could be a 2B, 3B, doesn't matter. Why sharpen it with a knife, you might ask? Why not just use one of those little sharpeners that you can kind of rotate it in? The best ones are brass, by the way, if you do want to invest in those. And I would say that the reason I do that is when you use those little tools to sharpen with, it doesn't give you much of graphite to work with. And I like a longer piece of graphite for shading and so on. Now the easy route, by the way, before I forget, is just an electric pencil sharpener. This particular one is X-Acto. It's a good brand for the graphite, not for the charcoal. However, Maria is going to include in the link a better brand for the charcoal pencil that does a pretty good job. Let's begin. I have a box cutter knife. Now I like this particular brand. It's called Olfa, O-L-F-A. And I like it because I can take, as the blades get a little dull and you really want a sharp blade for this, you can actually break off the old blade and you have a new one. So I really like it for that reason. Plus it's just a good sturdy knife here. So I'm going to bring that out a little bit. And I start back here and I push. So rather than use my right hand, I'm right-handed, I'm actually using my left thumb to do that. And I start further back at a very shallow angle, pushing this like so. That's the key. If you start doing it like this, you're going to probably break it and you're not going to have much control. So the idea is to keep it shallow and just push with the opposite thumb. Now, I can't tell you how many countless pencils I have broken. So I'm not going to tell you here and now. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that this is foolproof. It takes practice and time and patience, and particularly with the softer graphites like the 4B and the 6B, they're more prone to breaking as you get closer to it. So you do have to be patient. Now, as you can see, I'm exposing the graphite here, and there's a little bit of glue that connects the wood to the graphite, so you have to be a little more careful. That's why you want a nice sharp blade. Again, I'm just pushing with my opposite thumb and shaving, lightening my touch. Now, some artists I've seen like to go even further back than this, and if you get to here, then you can do that, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So this is getting pretty close to where I want it, so I don't break it. Nothing more frustrating, by the way, than getting this close and then having it break on you, and it does happen, I'm not going to lie to you. So now I've exposed it. If you want a really nice sharp, can you see that okay, Maria, against it? If you want a nice sharp point, what I've got here, now this is a block of sandpaper It's got a rough side and a smoother side that you can get at most hardware stores. And it's pretty cool because you can just hold this. And what I'm doing is I'm rotating this as I go back and forth. So this is how you can begin to get that point sharper. The other way you can do it really simply, if you don't want to go out and buy that, I have here a piece of 100 grit sandpaper by the sheet. This is going to be a lot cheaper for you. I actually use this quite a bit. And now, same thing, I'm going to rotate this like this while I go back and forth. Now you have to be careful not to break it here too, so you watch your pressure. Already you can see a nice sharp point. Again, the reason I like to do it this way is I can use this if I'm doing shading in a drawing. Can I do this, Maria, right here? If I'm doing shading on a drawing, look, I can get a nice even tone using the whole side of the tool this way. And that's why I like to have a nice long point. All right.
Let's see the charcoal now.
Now
the ultimate test.
The ultimate test. I've got a 2B charcoal, which is a pretty standard softness. The H series, of course, is always harder. Let's see how I do here. Maria, are you going to pray for me? Again, I'm starting back and keeping it very shallow. Pushing with the opposite thumb. So this right hand, I'm right-handed, doesn't whittle. Like most people think they're going to whittle like that. I would not recommend that. You're actually pushing, coming back this way, and keeping it quite shallow so you don't put too much pressure on that charcoal. Now see, I've already exposed it right there. This is when I know it's time to kind of back off a little bit and keep my angles very, very shallow. Once again, especially with these charcoal tools, there is a bit of glue that connects the wood to the actual charcoal, and you have to kind of get through that. So far, so good, Maria. If it breaks, then you start again, but it looks like so far, so good. But to really be light. See, that's the little glue part that holds it in there. Now, I have to tell you that it's really important to have a nice new sharp blade. And nothing dulls this blade easier and quicker than cutting through wood. So that's why I like this particular brand, because I go through a lot of blades with this. Keep it shallow, push very lightly. And a lot of you might say, well, this is a really laborious task, Mark. But I actually find it kind of meditative. Right before I go to a figure drawing class, or session rather, we have some wonderful figure drawing artists here in the Benicia Arsenal. Randy Sexton, wonderful painter, hosts these life drawing sessions. And I always spend time in the early morning before I go over there, and I'll just take, I don't know, 20 minutes or so and just sharpen my tools. It's kind of a meditative act. All right, so there I've exposed that.
So now you're going to do the same thing with the sanding paper, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So
question?
You can show it if you want, but
yeah.
I want to keep going with because I'm curious about the...
Well, it's good for them to see. Now, I'll tell you one more thing. You see this charcoal dust? Here's a little bonus tip. I actually saved this and put it in a little canister because you can draw with that. You can take it and draw with it and make beautiful tones. So I don't waste that. Right now, it's going into the can. But that's a really beautiful material to draw with. You can do it in a variety of ways. So here I am just making sure. It just takes a minute, Maria, for this to get pretty sharp. You can make it as sharp as you want, or some people don't like a super sharp tool.
So here's a question for you while you do that. One of the artists, and I hope that she's watching this, because she asked a question and I couldn't find where she asked that question.
Yeah.
But she said that she remembers her grandfather always sharpening the pencils with a knife. Trying to zoom into the... but she wonders, and she loved watching him doing that, but she was wondering, what is the benefit of sharpening the pencils with a knife rather than just using a pencil sharpener? Why is it important for artists to do this laborious
task? Oh gosh, I think it might have to do with tradition, frankly. And you know, I'm old school. I really truly am. I like the physical act of doing this. There is something kind of contemplative about it. It's like preparing for battle in a way, sharpening my sword. And I know that sounds kind of silly and corny. So there's something about just the facility of it, the craft of it, being able to do this by hand. Yes, if you find the right pencil sharpener, the electric one, it's pretty cool just to stick this in there and go for it. But I can also tell you that even the best pencil sharpeners doesn't give you that particular kind of point. It won't be that exposed. And when you want to do, like I showed you, some beautiful shading using the whole side of that tool, you can't get it with the electric sharpener. It just doesn't go that far out.
Mm-hmm. So it is about the art of exposing as much of the graphite or charcoal within a pencil to do the drawings.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Now, for those of you who are maybe a little skittish around a sharp blade, there is this particular, and there's lots of different brands, by the way, of this particular one. This is made by General, the maker of pencils. So this is a pencil.
It's a charcoal pencil.
It's a charcoal pencil, and they come in different densities. And what you do is you pull this string like this, and it kind of unravels here. Now, I'll show you how this works. I'm going to tell you something right now. Over the years, I have used these with some success. I say some success because sometimes they go wonky on you, and it doesn't tear off as evenly as one might want. But you can see right now it's behaving, you see, it's behaving.
So the charcoal is wrapped in paper, not in wood.
Correct, it's just wrapped in paper. This is for people who would rather not deal with the knife, or perhaps they don't have the access to the electric sharpener, maybe their budget won't allow. And so this is the next best thing. But you know what happens after a while with these, it's not a perfect system.
It's a little bit like the saran wrap. You start wrestling with it.
Yes, now you see.
Or when you lose the beginning of a Scotch tape. And
exactly. So you have to be really careful with these, but you see that did a nice job. Now what drives me crazy, and I always, is drawing with this string dangling, Maria. So I just come in here.
You can cut it out.
And I cut that out because that just drives me nuts.
Okay, show us the willow stick. Show us the willow stick.
Okay, now there are some people who like to have a sharp willow stick for that same reason. I happen to not be one of them, to be quite honest. On occasion, I will sharpen. But let's start with this rougher side here. And it's the same idea.
So on the willow stick, you don't use the knife. You only use the sanding paper.
Right. And so I've got this block. I could use the sanding paper as well. I might go to the sanding paper. But I'm going to the rougher side of this block just to get this thing started, and you can see that. And maybe switch over to the 100 here.
And again, you can collect that fine dust.
I like to collect that dust. I do. Now, you might want to wear gloves. This does get kind of messy. This doesn't take long at all. Because it's so soft, and look at that beautiful point. Can you see it okay, Maria?
Give me a second, yes.
And so on a piece of paper when you're drawing, just to make the example here, the nice thing is you have that nice soft ability, but you can also get into a nice sharp line with that. So it's pretty wonderful for that reason.
Okay, what about the charcoal sticks and, the graphite sticks and the compressed charcoal sticks? Do you sharpen those at all?
So the compressed charcoal sticks, of which there are many kinds, can also be sharpened like this as well. And again, I would collect that dust just to use it. Graphite sticks, I have never sharpened those. They come in a kind of a block form, although they do come in a round form. I take that back. They come in a round form. So I haven't done it, but it certainly is worthwhile for those who would like to have a nice sharp graphite rounded tool to work with. Okay. Yeah.
So any last thoughts to wrap it up?
Wear gloves if you don't want to end up like this. Otherwise, no, that's pretty much it. Take the time to do this, and don't get overly frustrated if you break a few points along the way. It's kind of the way life works sometimes.